in here, see if we can get the room populating. Hopefully everything's all right. We should be, as long as you can hear us okay. We're still working on these issues as far as video goes. I'm not really sure what happened, but it started this week, Adam. It started like Monday and was never happening before Monday.
Yeah, it's weird. And I don't think it's just us either. Like, I think it's been happening for a lot of people.
Yeah, so we'll keep it going.
Different shows.
Yeah, as long as we're audible, as long as the audio is all right. It's something, though, over the weekend, do what we can to make sure this gets fixed up for good. But nevertheless, we have 8 baseball games, and it's an interesting Friday. It's not going to be like this going forward, as you know. We're going to have a lot of 14 and 15 gamers on Friday and a lot of them on Tuesday. But I do think that there's a couple teams around the league. Obviously, we know what the Cubs' Friday home schedule looks like. I don't know if it's the Rays or the Indians, one of them that are going to be doing a whole lot more like 6 p.m. games on Friday.
I think the Yankees are too.
The Yankees. What I don't understand is, and I'm sure there's a reason for it that I'm just unaware of, why wouldn't they do those more on the weekdays than on Friday when everyone usually has off, especially like kids have off from school on Saturday?
I thought that they were just doing it during the week in general, not just on Fridays. I know that's what the Indians always did, and they were like, I thought that's just kind of who teams were starting to imitate, was those like 6:30 start times for Cleveland during the week.
Yeah, it could be. Somebody had said something that it was Friday. That's where I heard it from. Obviously, we've had a bunch of those 6 p.m. games, but whatever. Anyway, before we get started, just to give you a rundown of our schedule today, you've got the Deeper Dive with Adam and myself, and then the NBA Live Before Lock with Fast Eddie Fear, and MLB Live Before Lock with Chris and Jake. That's what we've got going on today, so you want to stick around on YouTube for all of that after Adam and I finish up. So let's take a quick look here, Adam. And again, like I said, Fast Eddie Fear going to be handling all of your basketball content. We have a monster basketball slate today. It's 13 games, all right? So where do you even start with this? I ask you because I believe you did a NBA strategy show with Josh this morning.
Yeah, so we have gotten a fair amount of news throughout the day. Everyone that was questionable on Dallas has been ruled out since the show with Josh this morning. So that opens up value there with no Luka, no Powell, no Brunson. So, I mean, you have Trey Burke, you have Maxi Kleber, you have Justin Jackson should play a bunch of minutes. So, obviously you can look there for value. You have value in Memphis with Connie and Joakim Noah out, Valanciunas obviously out already. So you have Ivan Rabb. They did sign Tyler Zeller, but I still expect Rabb to get plenty of minutes. You have DeLon Wright and Tyler Dorsey as value there. In Phoenix, you have no Devin Booker. You have no Kelly Oubre. You have no TJ Warren. You have no DeAndre Ayton. So Rashawn Holmes should get a bunch of minutes there. Josh Jackson should get a bunch of minutes and scoring responsibilities. Not that always translates to fantasy points for him, but he'll have the opportunities. So it's opening up like you would expect it to. Obviously you have New Orleans on the other side of that Phoenix game as well without Anthony Davis or Drew. So there's plenty of value here on this slate. There are a few games that have playoff implications, but not as many as you would expect on a 13 gamer. But obviously a lot of different directions you can go.
All right. Any must play staple plays here for you, or just contrarian pivots that you think make a whole lot of sense on a slate like this, whether they be high priced, middle tier, or bottom tier, just to get people started off?
I would definitely be prioritizing paying up for the centers with Towns, Gobert in a really nice spot against Sacramento, Andre Drummond. Blake Griffin went through shoot around, still a game time decision, but I expect huge minutes from Drummond regardless in a pace up spot against Oklahoma City in one of the few games that matters playoff-wise on the slate. So, a good spot for Drummond. And then also with DeMarcus Cousins out, I don't know if it'll go overlooked or not. I could certainly see people shying away from blowout risk on a slate this big. But Steph Curry, without Cousins since the All-Star break, has a 35% usage rate, and he's only $8,800 on DraftKings. So that's a spot where if people are going to look elsewhere, I would really like to get the Curry.
Where are you at on Costa Kufos? 3,100 on DraftKings.
Yeah, that's another one with Cauley Stein ruled out. Not the most appealing spot or position, obviously, but he's 3,100, and you would expect that he gets at least some run. They can obviously play Bagley behind him and get more minutes for other guys taking Bagley's spot at the 4, but certainly an appealing price tag.
All right. Anything else here before we move on to MLB?
I don't think so.
All right. Fast Eddie Fear will be up at 6 p.m. Eastern for your live before lock. Just a boatload of games. So if you're playing tonight, you'll want to stick around for that. It's pretty intense.
I forgot one.
Please.
Moutier was ruled out since the show this morning, so Mario Hezonja starting at point guard for the Knicks.
Yeah, I saw that. Unbelievable, huh?
Yeah.
It certainly is April. All right. Let's move forward. Pittsburgh and Cincinnati, the first game on the slate. Talking baseball here. No more basketball. Talking baseball. So the one thing about this is Joe Musgrove is not a bad pitcher. He's just not great either. Definitely has significantly better stuff against righties, better strikeout stuff by a wide margin against same-handed hitters. And then Sonny Gray, man, comes out in his first start, gets blowed up 2 2/3 innings. I guess you wouldn't say blown up, but he walked 4, gave up 9 base runners. He only faced 18 batters. It was undoubtedly a rough go in his debut for Cincinnati. PNC Park is definitely going to help him here today. We know how much he struggled at Yankee Stadium and was better on the road, but an interesting pitching matchup to say the least. We'll kick it off with both of these pitchers and get into some bats afterwards.
Yeah, I think it is a really interesting pitching matchup. It's 2 pitchers that, to certain extents at least, I like in general. Musgrove, I buy into his stuff. I think he should be a good starter, especially if he changes his pitch mix a bit. I think he can get more swinging strikes. But also, I'm a little concerned about him because he has a long history of injuries, and this is his first start of the season. But he pitched 2 innings in relief on, I believe it was Sunday. His fastball was averaging like 90, 91 miles an hour, which normally he averages around 94. Normally guys throw harder when they come out of the bullpen. So I'm not putting a ton of stock into it, but the takeaway for me is just that I wouldn't be getting the Musgrove much on this particular slate anyway. But now I have some interest in getting some full Cincinnati stacks just on the off chance that there is something wrong there and that he is going to be less effective. And then on the other side with Gray, I still buy into his stuff. He was absolutely awful in that first start. I really don't like taking guys against Pittsburgh, though, especially on this slate. There are a few pitchers that I do really like. The ballpark's nice, like you said. The price tag is certainly appealing, $6,700 on DraftKings and $6K flat on FanDuel. So I can see getting to some of him if I'm playing 150 lineups, but I'm not prioritizing him because I do have someone that I think both of us really like in his price range that I like more. And I am concerned by the fact that he just still could not throw strikes his last time out. And, again, just not a lot of strikeouts in this Pittsburgh lineup. So if I had to choose a side here, I would lean towards, again, just going to Pittsburgh bats as a full stack. Not guys that I really love as one-offs because there's not a lot of individual power. But if you're going to have Gray struggling to throw strikes and putting a lot of guys on base, you can, rack up points that way, especially on FanDuel.
I'm with you. And yes, there is another guy in similar pricing that we probably are both fans of. I will say, though, hitting on this slate, even though you have 8 games and no real elite pitchers, hitting is not all that special. There are guys that are going to stand out. We're going to like specific teams, but it's not really jam-packed for an 8-gamer.
Yeah, and I think that's important to point out, especially after me kind of just saying that I had some interest in Cincinnati and Pittsburgh stacks. Going through this slate, like you said, it's not a lot of great pitching, but it's not a lot of bad pitching either, especially as far as giving up home runs. And so a lot of the stacks that I like, it's more just based on either the talent of the offense and ignoring the pitcher they're facing, or just the blow-up risk of the pitcher, even though normally they're going to be perfectly fine.
That's exactly what I was focusing on today as well. You have to look at the blow-up potential. For example, Frazier if you're looking at a guy like Adam Frazier, who has been leading off for Pittsburgh and really off to a pretty strong start to the season overall. Another kind of interesting thing about Frazier, we'll see if it holds, Adam, is This dude has already stolen 2 bases this season. He stole 1 base last season. He's leading off against Sonny Gray. A pretty weak second base position. Frazier stands out as somebody to me, whether it be cash or tournaments, that makes a lot of sense. And as far as stacking, you're right. Like, Sonny Gray has blow-up risk, and this is a Pittsburgh Pirates team that isn't going to cost you really too much. Like, most of these guys, Gong's 3,900, Frazier, DraftKings specifically is 3,800, Starling Marte is 4,200. They're all pretty inexpensive. I guess the weird thing is you're not really going to be paying a premium for pitching, even if you wanted to.
Right. Like, there's 2 pitchers at the top that I really like, but they're both less than $10,000.
Well, but that's what I mean. Nobody 10. There's no guys priced like Scherzer and DeGrom.
Right. Exactly.
All right, let's dive a little bit deeper into the hitting here. Then we'll talk Pittsburgh and Cincy. We'll do it individually and kind of break it down by position a little bit. I've just noticed, like, it feels like each position is a lot less deep than you would think it would be. I already talked about Frazier. What about the rest of this Pittsburgh team?
Yeah, I mean, it sucks that Corey Dickerson's still not in the lineup. You know, Cervelli batting third at catcher is always appealing just because the position's not very good.
Well, catcher's terrible. Catcher's terrible tonight.
Catcher's terrible every night, but yeah.
It's worse tonight than it is almost every night, and that's saying a lot.
Yeah, especially if Real Muto gets rained out.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, Cervelli batting third, I'm sure I'll get there a decent amount just because. Starling Marte at 4,200, that's too cheap of a price tag for the upside that he brings. He steals bases, he has some power. So I think that he'd be one of my favorite Pittsburgh plays. And then Jung-Ho Kang at shortstop, well, third base shortstop on DraftKings. He's another guy that has, enough pop to where I think I would get to some of him. And I agree with you on Frazier. I actually had no idea he'd only stolen 1 base last year, but that shocks me because I thought speed was like the entire reason he was in the major leagues.
Yep. Apparently not. No, he actually has doubled his stolen base total in 5 games this season. What about the Cincinnati Reds? Winker, Votto, Puig, Suarez, Kemp, Peraza, Barnhart, Iglesias, Gray. Throwing this out there, though, only three lefties. Musgrove's K rate versus righties has been a whole lot better than it has against lefties. You do have a couple bats with some pop in this lineup, but as far as upside goes for Musgrove, I think this is one of the better ones he'd get just from a strikeout standpoint alone.
Yeah, a couple guys here, though, that kind of stand out to me, at least to some extent. Joey Votto obviously has not looked very good to start the season, which has been the case for, years now. Rashawn Holmes was just ruled out.
I saw that.
Gotta love the NBA.
I swear, it feels like every center that of note has been out, and then their backup is also out.
Yeah. So yeah, anyway, though, a couple of hitters, Otto hasn't looked very good, but one thing that makes this an appealing matchup for him is one of the reasons he's not as good a DFS play as he is like a real life hitter throughout the course of the season is how willing he is to take walks and, go deep into counts and just, look to get on base instead of really driving the ball. Joe Musgrove does not walk, guys. One of the lower walk rates that you'll see. He's going to throw Joey Votto strikes. He's going to make him swing the bat. And, Votto is a good hitter when he has to actually hit. So that gives him a little bit more upside than he normally has. And then Yasiel Puig, the best right-handed slider hitter on this team, put up pretty good numbers against right-handed sliders over the last few years, power and expected WOBA both. That's how I would expect Musgrove to try and get him out. The price tag's reasonable for the amount of power that Puig has. So I would put him up there as a one-off that I like as well.
All right. Want to talk Philly and Minnesota? We'll go assuming that it's not going to get rained out.
Sure.
I mean, we're projected to see light rain. I wouldn't be surprised if they just played through it, but we'll see. I mean, it's definitely going to rain. It's been raining around me all day, but it's like drizzle. So
for what it's worth, as of right now, I'm ignoring this game.
Just entirely ignoring it.
Yep.
All right.
Unless I like just low owned Philly stack a little bit, but
that takes a decent amount away from the slate too. It is cold out, but those temperatures would help Pavetta quite a bit. He got off to a rough start this season, but just added usage of the curveball last year, an improved curveball really helped him against opposite-handed bats, which had really plagued him the previous year. We're going to assume that this game is playing. I'm not saying it is, but we can't just not cover it.
Yeah,
so
for sure.
Let's just assume, for now, like it's going to play. Pavetta, $7,700 on DraftKings. We're talking about a guy who does have a very solid K rate. You look at the Minnesota lineup that we're working with today, and no Estudillo, which always helps because he literally does not strike out. It's actually really incredible. CJ Cron, Marwin Gonzalez with the 4 and 5, Kepler, Polanco, Rosario 1, 2, 3, and then the 6, 7, 8, 9. Jake Cave, Scope, Castro, and Odorizzi. If this game is expected to play without any limitations or goes off without a hitch, Pavetta to me does have a whole lot of upside against the Twins. And then Odorizzi on the other side coming off a really strong opening start. But I don't know how much of that I would buy into against this Phillies lineup. What's your take here?
Yeah, I mean, that's where I'm at as well. If the weather somehow clears up and we can get to a pitcher, Pavetta at 7,700 is clearly a really good play against a Minnesota lineup missing its designated hitter that already has some holes in it anyway. Buxton's not in the lineup, which is a 30+% strikeout guy that's not there, but it is also a relatively dangerous hitter, or at least a hitter with some upside. So really just not the most appealing lineup. If you go through it and break it down like pitch by pitch for Pavetta, there's no one in the lineup that he doesn't have at least one pitch that he can get them out with. So it sets up as a good lineup. It's a really nice price tag for him there, much less appealing on FanDuel. And then on the other side, I'm with you on Odorizzi. He's someone that I roster probably more than most people in DFS, and I really liked some changes he made last year. He used to be a pretty heavy reverse splits guy, started throwing a slider more last season, started getting more strikeouts against righties and not giving up as many home runs to them, but just a really dangerous Philadelphia lineup in a favorable park. It is cold, like you said, but still not a bad spot to hit in, and just really good hitters here. Like Real Muto would be the clear top catcher play for me. McCutchen, Harper graded out really, really well. So if somehow we can get to this game, then I love the Phillies bats. And I did want to just kind of reiterate when I said that I'm ignoring this game that I will, throw in at least some small percentage of Philly stacks just because they'll be really low owned.
Right. And this is a Phillies team that has every ability to just erupt. I'm not sleeping on Segura either. He's just such a low K guy, such a low strikeout bat at another pretty weak position. Another thing too, you've got Segura batting behind McCutchen and ahead of Bryce Harper. You're going to see a lot of really good pitches every single day. And hopefully Rhys Hoskins turns it around sometime soon. Batting behind Harper. I mean, the way that this lineup is constructed, there are no real easy outs. And I think McCutchen leading off actually makes a lot of sense in this lineup. It's going to be a tough go for Odorizzi if they play. The Phillies would be one of my preferred stacks. And Pavetta, if we think that, if we get reports that everything's going to be in good shape, Pavetta is definitely going to be on my towards the top of my list of pitchers on DraftKings. On FanDuel, he's the most expensive pitcher. On DraftKings, he's $7,700, and he's cheaper than McHugh, Bieber, Porcello, Gausman, Quintana, and Montes. That's insane. So,
yeah,
something I'd be very willing to take advantage of. Any interest in Minnesota bats here if it plays? The reason I ask is because we know that Pavetta is still prone to giving up some home runs. He will still be facing a lot of lefties. It is pretty chilly there, but it's still a favorable park. And as we've seen, Citizens Bank Park hasn't been friendly to a lot of these righties in Philly.
Yeah, nothing that I'd be like really heavily prioritizing. Obviously Eddie Rosario is fine. Jorge Polanco batting second at a reasonable price tag at shortstop has some pop, but nothing that would be a big priority for me from Minnesota.
All right. Estudillo would have been in play for me for two reasons.
Yep.
Catcher is bad, and when you know that he's going to make contact every time, it's better than someone who you're worried about striking out 30% of the time,
Oh, yeah, no question.
but we don't.
And
have
he doesn't walk either. Like he hits the ball every
right.
single
He
time.
only exactly. I'll take that all day. You know, might gap a double. I'm cool with that. Cleveland and Toronto, Adam. We've got. Was this the guy you were talking about?
Yes.
Okay.
I thought you meant Bieber. I was like, yeah, me and everyone else.
No. Come on now. We've got Shane Bieber on the mound and Trent Thornton. I had quote tweeted a video of Thornton's curveball today. And in his 2019 and also his MLB debut, his curveball had a spin rate of 3,053 RPMs, Adam. If this were last year, that would have been third among all starters and up there with the likes of Seth Lugo, whose spin rate on the curve is just filthy. Thornton has a legitimate out pitch. A legit out pitch. Even we've seen it. He threw it 32% of the time in his first start, in his debut against the Tigers. He looked very good. He is a two-pitch pitcher, four-seam curveball, but he is the cheapest option on DraftKings, and he is facing a Cleveland Indians lineup that is without Jose Ramirez with that foot contusion. And I'll say it again, no Lindor, no Kipnis, no Brantley, no Encarnacion. Hell, not even Yandy Diaz, who doesn't strike out much. Like this is a bare bones Cleveland lineup against the guy who clearly has strikeout upside in Trent Thornton.
Yeah, I didn't know about the spin rate till you tweeted it. That's obviously nice to know. It's not everything, but obviously it's good.
It doesn't hurt.
It's impressive. Yeah, exactly. But even like if you look at his FanGraphs page, his stuff grades out as pretty good. And he's projected for over 8 Ks per 9 innings by like every projection system. Lineup is just really bad, like you said. So I like Thornton here. I think the price tag is too cheap for DraftKings. So he's my top SP2 on DraftKings. If I need to save a bunch of money on FanDuel for some reason, then I'm fine with that as well.
All right. Where do you stand on the other side of this one with Bieber? I know you said Bieber, just like everybody else, of course, I get that. But what I mean is you have McHugh at the top on DraftKings, Porcello 9,100. I don't think. Are you on Porcello? You're not on Porcello. Okay, good. We can forget about that. Kevin Gausman at 9K. I probably have more interest than I should. And then, of course, Bieber, 9,300. On FanDuel, you have Pivetta at the top, and then Bieber, $200 cheaper. He's the second highest priced pitcher. Then you have McHugh at 86, Odorizzi at 81. Gausman's all the way down at 72. So talk to me about how you're evaluating Bieber for DraftKings and FanDuel separately.
I like him a lot on both sites. I think that there's enough cheap hitting FanDuel that you can still get there pretty easily. And on DraftKings, you can save money at SP2 with Thornton. So Bieber, I think, is a really good play. I think he'll be really popular, especially assuming that the weather gets most people off of Nick Pivetta on DraftKings. I would expect Bieber's ownership, which is already projected to be high, to just skyrocket. It's a Toronto lineup that has just been absolutely terrible this year against bad pitchers. Now you have a guy in Bieber who throws a ton of strikes, has good stuff. Threw a slider 35 to 40% of the time last season. If you go through StatCast on this, basically up being strike rates on that pitch, you get really low expected wOBAs. It grades out in pretty much any way you want to look at it as a good spot for Bieber. So the only argument that I would make against him is just that he's going to be really, really popular and it's baseball. And if you're playing a tournament with 22,000 people in it and 25K to first, stacking Toronto isn't the craziest idea, especially because we don't have a lot of offenses to love on this slate. But beyond that, just talking in terms of what I expect to happen, Bieber is a clear top pitching option here.
Yeah, Toronto's offense has been buoyed by two players. That's Grichuk and Rowdy Tellez. Like other than that, it's been brutal. Like if you looked at their splits versus righties this season, very small sample, you'd be surprised how it's not nearly as bad as you would initially suspect. And that's because of those two batters in the middle of the order. Aside from that, though, it's been rough. Justin Smoke's been dismal, and he's dealing with an injury anyway. He is in the lineup. You have Socrates Bruto at the top leading off. Teoscar Hernandez. Your other, he's a righty, but your other lefties here are Galvis and Richard Urena. Like, I mention this because Bieber's struggles have come against lefties, at least with what we know of him. There aren't a ton of really viable lefties here. If Smoke turns it around, that hurts a bit, but I mean, it's not that crazy to assume he should have a really solid start. I guess what I would ask, though, a couple things here, Adam, that we should probably nail down. He pitched out of the pen in his first appearance. He is their fifth guy. They didn't need a fifth starter. Now they do. I'm not assuming that we should see any type of limitations here.
No, I mean, I'd be surprised if we saw him get like 115 pitches like Bauer did last night, but I don't think he should be limited. I think that overall they're looking to limit his innings at least somewhat this season, but I don't expect it to be an in-game thing. I think that's more like that's why he's the number 5 starter, is so that they can just skip starts when they don't have to have a fifth starter in there. But, I would expect, 6 innings out of him tonight, 6 or 7.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with that. I also don't have a problem with getting away from him a bit, where he's going to be wildly popular. Just pulling up our ownership projections right now. Let's take a look at these for DraftKings and FanDuel. So our last update was an hour ago, but it won't change as much for baseball as it does for basketball. We've already had most of the lineups out. Bieber on DraftKings, 31%. But here's what you mentioned. It's very important. Right now, Nick Pivetta is projected to have the highest ownership on the slate at 33%. If that game is washed out or we know that it won't play, Bieber's ownership is going to skyrocket. I would assume that Gausman's does as well. On FanDuel, you have Gausman number 1 at 24%, and I think rightfully so. He's dirt cheap. Bieber is your second highest owned pitcher at 20%. And then Pivetta is way down there. Well, not way down there. He's at 18%. So that would still influence ownership. That Philly game could change a lot, not just at pitcher, but pretty much everywhere, Adam.
Oh, no question. Where's Colin Mchugh on FanDuel relative to Bieber?
Colin Mchugh on FanDuel is 7%.
Ooh, give me some Colin Mchugh.
Yeah, that's just a pretty simple one right there. On DraftKings, and actually, let me see here. Mchugh, yeah, so Mchugh and Bieber on FanDuel are pretty much the same price, $300 difference. On DraftKings, they're not far off either. Mchugh's $9,500, Bieber's $93,000, except Bieber has 31% projected ownership, Mchugh at 18%. So there you have it. That's what we're looking at right now. And
so I mean, I love Bieber, and I know you do too. I don't want it to sound like we're not high on him. It's just there are pivots, and it's certainly if you're playing an off the board stack, then by all means have Bieber. But if you're going to, I don't even know what the chalk stack is right now, but if you're going there, then maybe pivot to McHugh or Gausman, or whoever, because it's baseball, and you don't have to play like. Things can just go poorly no matter who someone's facing.
You kind of just made a point that I was talking about earlier on the show. We don't even know what the chalk stacks are.
Right.
Maybe it'll be Houston again, and they can just disappoint everyone. But I don't know. I get it. I know they have a 4.8 implied total, but Frankie Montas is not that bad.
It's not that good either, but I agree.
He's not that good, but he's also not terrible.
Yep.
But I feel that way about a whole lot of pitchers on this slate, where I don't have any interest in playing them, but I don't think they're awful. Anyway, we talked pitchers here. You mentioned Toronto. It's kind of an off-the-reservation type stack. Isn't the craziest idea, especially with how bad they've been. Cleveland bats on the other side. No Ramirez, who I would have still had interest in. I like Thornton a lot, but Ramirez 4,100 on FanDuel is still pretty sensible. He's out of the lineup with that foot contusion. Is there anyone here, a dirt cheap Brad Miller for you? Jake Bowers, Leonis Martin at the top of the lineup. I mean, honestly, I think a Cleveland Indians stack does make as much interest as I have in Thornton, as good as I think this guy can be. The Cleveland Indians stack, given their pricing, and the way this lineup is structured, to me, it makes a good amount of sense, actually.
I would like a Cleveland stack more if Thornton's projected ownership comes up. Right now, we have Brandon Woodruff, or at least last I looked, we have Brandon Woodruff as the like chalk cheap SP2. So I would prefer going to the Cubs over the Indians just because I think leverage is so big in baseball.
And that makes a lot of sense. Yep.
Yeah. Plus, I don't know if you're looking at FanDuel, but Brad Miller's 4,200 on DraftKings. Like the Indians are not really cheap.
Yeah, I was talking FanDuel because isn't Brad Miller like 2,200 there or something?
Probably. I don't have it in front of me. I have DraftKings pricing up, but I would assume so.
He's 2K flat, so yeah. He's minimum.
DraftKings has been to baseball what FanDuel's been to basketball as far as
100%. Yep. Yeah. What FanDuel has been to centers in basketball, DraftKings is every position. Yeah. But on FanDuel, like Miller's 2K, Bauer's 2,700, Santana is 39. So that's a little bit. Most of these guys, what I'm saying, are actually really cheap. Hanley's 3K. I think Leonis Martinez is really cheap as well. He is 2,900. Basically, all I'm saying is it would be super, super easy if you wanted to get a stack in there. Tyler Naquin is 2K flat. Like half of these guys are minimum salary, but I definitely like Thornton more than Cleveland. Just throwing it out there. But I think your point is definitely well taken. Like I looked at it earlier, and Thornton had 6% projected ownership on DraftKings. He's come up to 8%. But it's kind of crazy given that you have guys like Godley and Woodruff that are projected to have more than twice as much ownership. Even Felix Pena against the lefty-heavy Texas team. That's crazy with this Indians lineup, with how bad
I just saw that. Now I'm even more excited about this slate. I hope that holds.
That ownership?
Texas is my favorite stack again, so that would be nice if Pena has ownership.
It's crazy, right? I mean, well, you know what? Matt Harvey was also highly touted yesterday, so I guess it makes sense, right?
Yeah, I guess.
Well, I'll take it. I mean, you're not going to complain about it, are you?
No.
All right. Arizona. By the way, we had a bunch of people tweeting us and messaging us with pretty monster winnings from those Texas stacks yesterday. One of our listeners hit $11K on $71.
Yeah, that's pretty solid. One of our listeners hit 70K on the early slate yesterday too.
Yeah, I got it. I didn't want to put his name out there. I got a DM from him.
Yeah.
The same one? Yeah.
Yeah.
On Twitter DM?
Yep.
Yeah. 71K on what was it, $100 or something?
Something like that, yeah.
Crazy. Yeah, I figured he didn't want to be known.
Yeah.
But
yeah, no, it was the Texas thing was frustrating for me because I just kind of put together bad lineups in Cruncher yesterday. Like I don't know. It's something I need to figure out what I did wrong, but I just didn't have anything like together correctly. But it was like everything I wrote about was really good. So it was good to see everyone else win while I broke even on while the stuff I talked about went off.
It's a hell of a feeling, right? Yeah, I know. Okay, so he won $73,499 on, you ready for this? Single bullet entries into the $20, the $4, and the $60 on DraftKings. Single bullet.
Yeah. He had a 2 lineup train in that $20 or $15, whatever it was.
The one on DraftKings? On
DraftKings, yeah.
Oh, well then it must be. Yeah, no, you know what? I'm sorry, they weren't single bullets. They were, because I'm looking at the bar, the bar and the on the app, so it's like the dots.
Yeah.
You can't see 2 of them because he must have run all trains.
Yeah.
So wow.
Yeah, because I came in 15th in that, and I saw the 2-man train at the top, and I was like, oh man, must be nice. And then I opened up Twitter and had the DM, and I was like, oh wow, at least at least it's someone that listens to the shows.
Crazy, man. Yeah, congratulations. You should have tweeted it out, so help us all out over here, bro. But I get it. I always said if I won the lottery, I'd want to live in a state where you could remain anonymous.
Yeah, no question.
You can in PA, but I get it.
My ego is too big. It wouldn't work anyway.
What's that?
My ego is too big. It wouldn't work anyway.
Oh, that's good. Well, what about but like, there's nothing. It's all luck in a lottery.
Yeah. For the lottery, yeah. I'm saying like
I'm talking lottery.
Like, big DFS wins. I can't.
I'm talking you hit the $2 billion Powerball jackpot. Yeah.
Yeah. No, there's nothing to brag about there.
You start getting a lot of friends coming around that that did you favors back in
Right.
05.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. All right. Let's talk Arizona and Boston. Porcello and Godley. Godley disappointed last year, after a really strong 2017. He's still got a hammer curve. He's still got some good stuff, but I'm not necessarily sure what to make of him. It's funny. You look at the fantasy points per game on DraftKings. They're both -2 after their first start. Both of these teams. Well, actually, no. Boston's got a 4.5 implied run total. Arizona at 4.1. And lineups, we do have lineups for both teams here too, Adam. Is this this is a 7:10 game. So it's technically a day game in Arizona, a late afternoon game, but a regular start time here on the East Coast. I guess we can talk pitching. I don't really have much interest in either of these guys, but maybe you do.
No, especially now that I noticed that, or you pointed out that we have Godley projected for pretty healthy ownership on DraftKings, where his price tag, like it's appealing. It's not the craziest thing in the world, like to think that Godley can beat Thornton here or whatever. But I think I'd rather take my chances on $6,700 Sonny Gray against Pittsburgh than on Godley against Boston. There's no question that Godley has stuff that can be really good, but even when he is good, he tends to struggle with his control. And this is a Boston team that you really don't want to do that with. They have a lot of patient hitters. They have obviously a lot of really good hitters, and it just scares me. Like I would much rather be getting the Boston stacks here than Godley, especially when you don't have a particularly good Arizona bullpen behind them either.
Yep. Also a pretty taxed bullpen as well. They've worked a lot over this first week. Bogarts I like quite a bit. Obviously Betts, Martinez, but kind of going back to shortstop where there are only a few guys I really have much interest in. Bogarts is one that, when healthy, is just so good against righties. Batting 5th here against Godley. It's not Fenway, but Chase is still a pretty favorable park, humidor or not. What do you make individually of this team? Obviously Betts and Martinez. Is there anyone that stands out? Benintendi, Moreland, Bogarts, Rafael Devers batting 6th, Swihart batting 7th.
Do you remember how Godley is at holding runners? I want to say he's bad, but I also might have him confused with Trevor Cahill.
I thought he was really good.
That might be the case.
It's one or the other. Hold on.
Cahill's terrible.
Hold on, I'll tell you. Yeah, no, he's really good. He allowed 1 stolen base in 2017 and 7 last year. Okay. So you're looking at 330 innings pitched over his last 2 seasons. He's allowed 8 total swipes. Yeah, he's really good.
Okay, yeah, because to me, like him and Cahill are like the same pitcher, so I just confused them. So yeah, I mean that takes appeal away from someone like Benintendi, or I mean really the Boston lineup in general. But yeah, like nobody really stands out to me, because if Godley is on, like I don't really like the matchup for anyone, but assuming that he's not completely dominant and he gets behind in some counts, then there's just so many good hitters in this lineup with Betts, Martinez, Bogarts at shortstop, like you said. So, I mean, I guess Bogarts would be my favorite just because of the position. But if I can get to, Betts or JD, then I'm happy to.
All right. We will talk some Arizona bats here just for a minute. Alex Avila batting 8th. God, what a treasure he is. I mean, it's crazy to me that whatever. What was it? 3 years ago that he got off to a ridiculous start and led the league in WOBA versus righties for 2 or 3 months. You remember that?
Yeah, it was whatever year exit velocity and hard hit percentage started to become a thing.
Yeah.
And he was leading the league, and we were playing him every day, and he was just striking out and hitting the ball hard.
Yeah, it's crazy. And then last year was just god awful. May have been 2 years ago as well, and 3 years ago that he was good. I can't remember. He was still pretty sure he was still with Detroit.
Yeah, he was.
Yeah. All right. Well, this lineup for Arizona: Jared Dyson, Eduardo Escobar, Peralta, Adam Jones batting cleanup, Christian Walker off to a nice start. He's batting 5th. Ketel Marte, Nick Ahmed, Alex Avila, and then Godley rounding it out. Anything stand out to you here? And also, I will just point out that some of these positions are weak. It might force our hand.
Yeah, I like the $4,200 DraftKings tag on David Peralta. I think that when you consider the price tags on other people, like Brad Miller's $4,200, David Peralta's $4,200, I'll take David Peralta.
Lorenzo Cain is $4K flat.
Yeah, okay, I'll take Kane there.
Crazy.
Yeah, it's and Braun's 4,200. Like I prefer Braun there, but for the point is being like 4,200 on Peralta is a pretty fair price tag given the prices on some other players. Eduardo Escobar with shortstop eligibility is a pretty good play as well. I think Porcello, just doesn't miss a ton of bats, and if he's not locating really well, his stuff isn't good enough to limit power.
All right. By the way, El Negro Loco asked top 3 stacks on FanDuel. Laffy, ship my money. We will give our top stacks at the end of the show, as we always do. I promise you that much. Stick around for it, and we will hit on all of them. Legalized asked, anyone on Pittsburgh? Well, we talked about it at the beginning of the show, but more or less, yes, Pittsburgh's perfectly fine here, especially where there's no clear stacks on this slate. Anything to add?
No.
All right, Miami, Atlanta. He's back, man. He's back. Kevin the Gas Can Gausman. Look, I'm a fan of the guy. It's done me. It's been trouble. I know you're the same way. It's been troubling over the past couple of years, but what are you gonna do? His swinging strike rate's always better than his actual K rate. It does matter who's behind the plate. Not nearly as much as Caleb Joseph or Wellington Castillo, but I'd be willing to bet, Adam, this season, the games that he starts with Tyler Flowers and not Brian McCann will be better for him. But anyway, we have Flowers behind the plate today. I filled in on the SiriusXM, Comish, the GM and Comish on SiriusXM Fantasy in the morning. I do the Awesemo radio show Saturday and Sunday, but I filled in today for, I think it was Jim Bowden, and Craig Mish was the host. I was co-hosting, and he asked, who do you like? And I said Gausman, and he was just disgusted by it. And it's funny because he's more of a season-long guy. He's not a DFS guy, and he's a sports bettor. But it is funny what DFS will bring you to do. And when you talk to someone in the context of DFS and they're thinking like, oh, you really like this guy, I think he's awesome. Huh? No, it's a little bit different than that. But anyway, he's 7,200 on FanDuel, 9K on DraftKings, making his first start of the season. He did throw 90 pitches in his final tune-up, so I'm not worried about that. And run totals, Adam, Miami keeps creeping down. They're now tied for the lowest on the slate with Toronto at 3.5. We'll get to Pablo Lopez, but let's start with Kevin Gausman.
I think it's a really important point you made about him throwing 90 pitches in that rehab start. That's obviously really good to know. He kind of did the opposite of what I thought was going to happen when he went to Atlanta last year. He did get better, which I expected.
From a run prevention standpoint, you're saying?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I thought he would get more strikeouts because Tyler Flowers is one of the best in baseball at analytics, basically, and just knowing how to work to a pitcher's strengths, how to get swings and misses. So soft contact was really good. He limited damage against him, but the strikeouts actually went down, which wasn't what I expected. I don't know what to expect this year. So for that reason, I'm a little hesitant to pay $9K for him on DraftKings in any high percentage of lineups. 7,200 on FanDuel obviously is a different story. But at the same time, it could eventually happen. He does have a really good swing and miss pitch in his splitter or changeup, depending on what site you're looking at. He throws hard. Like, he should be a better DFS pitcher than he ever has been. He goes through little stretches where he's great and then it disappears. So I think that there's still enough talent there that I'm interested. It's a terrible Miami team.
Horrible.
Yeah. But I would still have him, especially at this price tag, behind Bieber and behind McHugh.
What's interesting is his swinging strike rate was 11.2% with Atlanta. That's not bad at all. It's not elite, but it's definitely above average. And his K rate, as you said, was 18.2%. I do think something has to give here. And I wouldn't be surprised to see him start missing some more bats. Another thing is he made 10 starts. He made 10 starts with Atlanta. So maybe there's room to grow here. The matchups he faced were a lot of low strikeout teams as well. Pittsburgh twice. Miami was not a high K team last year. Philly twice. I guess they were pretty decent in terms of strikeouts, but he had 6 and 7 Ks against them. Struck out 8 against Milwaukee. But just looking at it now, a lot of these low K teams, he didn't have a lot of strikeouts against. We'll see what he can do in some good matchups, Adam. And you've got a Miami team that's running out Granderson, Anderson, Walker, Castro, Alfaro batting 5th. By the way, I will say, catcher's really bad. Alfaro batting 5th is not the craziest idea against Gausman. JT Riddle, Lewis Brinson, Peter O'Brien, and Pablo Lopez. He should put up a solid game here. I want to ask, and I do like Gausman, probably a little bit more than you do, just because I believe that the K rate should improve a little bit, even if just today against this Miami team. Let me ask you though, what are your thoughts on Miami stacks against Gausman at SunTrust, very lefty-friendly park? We do know that home runs have been an issue when he gets into trouble. Horrible, horrible Miami team. But if Gausman's going to be super popular, particularly on FanDuel where he has the highest projected ownership, are you willing to pull the trigger there?
On FanDuel, yes, for a couple of reasons. One, the ownership will be higher, like you just said. And two, home runs are less important. It's more, Miami is just always going to be a better FanDuel stack than DraftKings stack because they don't have a lot of individual, really like high upside, 2 home run hitters, but they can string together doubles and singles as well as, anyone. I mean, not as well as anyone, but any given day. Much worse than anyone. But, so just from the scoring standpoint, it's a more appealing stack as well. Like DraftKings, so much has to go right for Miami to be a really good stack. It's easier on FanDuel. So I would have interest there. Like where on DraftKings, I'm going to be including some Toronto stacks, or I plan to include some Toronto stacks. And like some Cubs stacks just to leverage against pitchers. I'll have Miami kind of take up that spot on FanDuel.
Okay. I like that. And Gausman's going to be higher owned there, as you said. So, kind of a win-win. It's risky. It's a good chance that Miami finishes the day with 1 run. But you could say that about a lot of these teams. Pablo Lopez, I had actually DM'd you earlier today about Lopez. I thought this was interesting. Now, this doesn't take away from any interest I have in Atlanta, but I did want to point this out. Pablo Lopez threw the changeup 22 times last week, okay? He got 9 whiffs. I don't know if you're familiar, not you, but if you're familiar with how many is a lot, or 9 whiffs on 22 is a ton. It's crazy. And in this start, he basically scrapped his 2-seamer. So I'm going to be interested to see if we have a higher strikeout version of Pablo Lopez this year. Again, I like Atlanta today, but I would at least urge everyone to watch him. I had noticed things like this with, Caleb Smith. You picked out a few last year where you get there before the public. Tonight wouldn't be the day because Atlanta's such a low strikeout team. But if Pablo Lopez goes out and does something very similar with a lot of changeup, decent swings and misses on it, and no 2-seamer, more 4-seamer, he might actually become fantasy viable down the line.
Yeah, he's someone who I like his stuff. I think that he can be good. I rostered him a pretty good amount last year. And I wouldn't talk anyone off of him here if they like him. I know people were talking about it in Slack earlier today, and I don't personally expect to get there a ton, but I don't think there's like a huge difference between him and Thornton, or him and Woodruff or whatever. I just don't really like the matchup against Atlanta, and I don't like the fact that he's outside of Miami. Atlanta, a team with some good hitters, some guys that are really tough to strike out, and it's a downgrade in park. So I'm not getting the much Lopez, but I certainly think that he's better than a $6,600 price tag if you take the opponent and the ballpark out of it. Yep.
And a guy, again, just to keep an eye on, because Pablo Lopez, if you're seeing, this, less 2-seamer for almost any pitcher means better fantasy value. Yep. I mean, just facts. Talk to me about some individual bats here for Atlanta.
Markakis is still cheap, not the highest upside guy, obviously, but not, puts the ball in play. I don't love Atlanta here. I do have respect for Lopez.
So do I.
They're expensive for one, and the guys that you want the most are at premium positions. You have Freeman at first base, you have Acuna in the outfield. Albies is better from the right side than the left side. So I don't love Atlanta. I just don't know how much strikeout upside Lopez has in this particular spot where I would have more.
Other than Flowers and Acuna and maybe Donaldson, you're not getting a lot of strikeouts here. Albies, Freeman, Inciarte, Markakis were all 18% or lower last year against righties. I guess where was Swanson at? Swanson was right around 22, but not crazy. It's still a very low strikeout team. Anything else on this game before we keep going?
Nope.
All right, Milwaukee and the Chicago Cubs. We have this game at Miller Park, very, very, very hitter-friendly. Brandon Woodruff with a 4.1 total against him. Quintana on the other side with a 4.5 implied run total against him for the Milwaukee Brewers. I mentioned a minute ago, Adam, that Lorenzo Cain is 4K flat on DraftKings. That seems pretty wild. Yeah, he wasn't a big power bat against lefties last year, but he had a 422 WOBA and 166 WRC plus. I mean, that's a really, really cheap cost for a guy that's leading off, is pretty good at baseball, and faces someone in Quintana who I guess you could say is league average at this stage of his career.
Yeah, I'm not a big Quintana guy. Nope. I think that I always kind of thought he was overrated. And he was always a guy that had a very, very thin margin of error, had to locate really, really well in any particular start because his stuff was never that great. And now his curveball's gotten worse year over year for the last few years. He is just not a guy that I'm really ever scared to take hitters against. And you get a dangerous Milwaukee lineup here. Cain, like you said, a good enough hitter. He offers some speed as well. And he's inexpensive. But then also Ryan Braun's one of my favorite individual hitters, one off or part of a stack. Jesus Aguilar at 4,400 is a nice price tag at first base. Perez, second base, shortstop, two not great positions and a reasonably cheap price tag. Does have some pinch hit risk there though. But Cain, Braun, Aguilar, I really like as a mini stack here. And you could certainly throw in some of the lefties if you just hope they get to Quintana early and get to the pen.
Yep, I'm with you. Cain definitely at the top for me, Braun as well. And yeah, Aguilar batting clean up here. You're not gonna turn away from that either. What about, and you mentioned a couple of the value guys. I'm just gonna throw them out there individually and get your take because we will have these questions. Hernan Perez batting sixth. Grandal is so much better from the left side of the plate. It's not even close. But, catcher is weak. And if you're stacking Milwaukee, just because there's a somewhat viable backstop here, I would say that he makes plenty of sense. And I guess you have Orlando Arcia. But what do you make of the 5 through 8 with Moose, Perez, Grandal, and Arcia?
Perez would be my favorite. But again, they can pinch hit for him once they get into the bullpen, so you run some risk there. Grandal, if you're stacking, I don't really like him as a one-off. I'd rather just save money at the catcher position than take Grandal on the bad side of his split. Arcia is a terrible, terrible hitter. So again, kind of just a guy that I would – he can differentiate your stacks if that's what you want to go for, but I don't think that Milwaukee is high enough owned that you really have to. And then, Moustakas, again, would just be a guy that I want in stacks because – individually it's not a great spot. So Perez would be the only guy that I would have any real interest in as a one-off.
All right, let's go to the other side of this one. We'll talk about the Cubs against Brandon Woodruff. Last year and this year as well, sitting 96 on that four-seamer. He is a fastball slider pitcher who mixes in a changeup every so often. But yeah, I'd say mid to high 90s thrower here. He can, I think last year he was topping out at a pretty high, what was it? 90. Yeah. 99. He was topping out at last season. So he's got some heat at him, but, he also doesn't have a whole lot of offerings. Like I said, throws that slider quite a bit. Got about 30% whiffs per swing on it last year, which is decent, but nothing special. What do you think of the Cubs here at Miller Park?
I have respect for Woodruff as a pitcher. I think 6,800 is cheaper than he should be in pretty much any matchup, but I don't like the matchup enough to want to roster him as like the most popular pitcher in that price range. It's kind of how I feel about Godley as well. I just have enough respect for the bats in this Cubs lineup to where if he continues to be projected for close to 20% ownership, I would rather take my chances with guys like Baez, Rizzo, Bryant, Contreras. You get a high upside stack there, even though the matchup isn't great. Woodruff struck out almost 27% of hitters with the Brewers last season, but in about 75 innings at AAA in 2017, he struck out like 21.5%. In 71 innings last year, he struck out 21.9%. He projects to be more in that range in the major leagues. There's no reason to think that he's going to like strike everyone out now that he's facing better hitters. It just doesn't work that way. So I don't want to get too carried away on his, previous numbers. It's just another spot where I respect the pitcher. I respect the offense he's going against. I don't have a strong take either way, so I would rather just do the opposite of what the field is projected to do.
All right. And that makes sense to me. Plus, you have Thornton, who's still really projected to have no ownership at all. I'm curious to see if that increases. I mean, I don't know. I would think.
Yeah, I mean, I made the point when we were talking about Thornton. If his ownership and Woodruff's ownership were to flip, I would run some Cleveland stacks out there and I would play more Woodruff.
Yep.
I would be less excited about the Cleveland stacks than the Cubs stacks just because the quality of hitter is much different. But that's all it is.
I'm with you. All right. Looking over Chicago. One thing about this Chicago team is while some of them are pricey, they do make for a pretty solid stack too, because you've got Contreras batting sixth, so there's your catcher spot. You have Rizzo, Baez, Schwarber 3, 4, 5, and then and Zobrist is pretty inexpensive batting leadoff. It makes for a stack where you can make a ton of different variations of it too. Before we move on, we got 2 games to go. And again, baseball takes less time for us to talk about per game than basketball, so I don't mind getting a little bit deeper into the weeds. If you are looking at stacks here, do guys like Descalso and Hayward at the bottom get any love from you?
No, especially like I'd rather get to Zobrist over Descalso. I'd rather get to almost any outfielder on the slate over Hayward. So they're guys that I would expect that amongst my Cubs stacks, there's a pretty steep drop off once you get past Wilson Contreras.
For sure. Just got another tweet from one of our subs. Last night, best finish ever in the big dance. This guy, blah blah. Or I could have gotten first or second, but took down 10K. Not bad.
Very nice.
Not bad. That was in basketball too.
Oh yeah, I think I saw that one earlier.
Yeah, it must have been our 5-minute analysis at the top of the deeper dive, yeah?
Gladly will take credit for that one, though.
Yeah, for sure. Congrats, man. All right, Houston and Oakland. We've got Colin McHugh, we got Frankie Montas. Houston, man, wow. I mean, it's really been tough early on for this team. I don't think anyone would deny it, right? I mean, 2 days ago, didn't they go completely scoreless? Yeah, they got blanked. Mike Minor throws 7 scoreless innings with 7 strikeouts. God, it's been pretty wild. They on the season now, Adam, the Houston Astros are 2-5. The Red Sox are 2-6. It's funny, baseball's such a long season. You'll forget about this shortly when they're at the top of their divisions. But right now I'm talking about it because it's reality. Let's talk about Colin McHugh first with this home matchup against Oakland. He is right now a 158 money line favorite, and Montas right now has the highest expected run total against him at 4.8.
Yeah, so I like McHugh here. He used to be a starter. He had decent stuff, but never really put it together. Went to the bullpen for Houston last year, was really good, struck out 37.7% of righties. Obviously, you don't take that number because pitchers are just better out of the bullpen. But the big takeaway is that he added a slider, and now he's brought that back to the starting rotation. threw it almost 40% in his first start against right-handed hitters. Overall, he had a little over an 18% swinging strike percentage in that start, struck out 9 in 5 innings against Tampa. The only bad thing to take away from that start was that he was pulled after 81 pitches in 5 innings. So that's a little bit concerning, but again, I don't think that it's not going to stop me from rostering him because I don't have anything that says he can't go 90 pitches in 6 innings this time. There are 6 righties in the Oakland lineup. There's a lot of power, so it's not a safe matchup. Toronto, no matchup in baseball is safe, but Toronto obviously is the more appealing matchup as far as just lack of good hitters. But there's still strikeouts here. Chris Davis strikes out. The bottom of this order, Laureano and Hundley both strike out a ton. Semion's around the 20 to 22% guy. Piscotty's around 20 to 22%. So is Chapman. Robbie Grossman does not strike out, but he also has no power, so he doesn't really matter. Morales and Profar, from the left side, not the easiest strikeouts that have some pop. But overall, the guys that have power in this lineup also will strike out. I really am excited about McHugh this season. I liked what we saw the first start, so I am looking to go there, especially at lower ownership than Bieber. But on FanDuel, we talked about it earlier, where he is projected for a lot lower ownership. I think that the upside's just as high.
No, I'm with you 100%. I'll be honest. There's something about the A's lineup that always scares me a little bit, but the McHugh on a slate. Sometimes you just go talent over matchup, and it's not like the matchup's terrible either. But I think this is one of those spots where you can very much make the talent over matchup argument. I agree with you. Last year, what did he throw? 7. He threw. Let's see. Out of the was everything out of the bullpen for him last year? I think it was.
If not everything, very close.
Let me pull it up. Yeah, 58 appearances, 0 starts, 11.7 Ks per 9 with 33% strikeouts. Now, do you sustain that as a starter? Probably not, but his first start wasn't a bad way to kick off the season. I'm with you here. It's pretty wild, too. I just want to go back to this again because I think it's really important. The ownership differential here to me is pretty important. Bieber and Pivetta being very, very popular. My guess is that if this game is washed out in Philly, the bulk of that ownership goes to Bieber, and then McHugh is still way behind him. And then on FanDuel, you have Justin. I knew that was going to happen. You have Shane Bieber at 20. Why does he have to have that last name, Adam?
Right.
Shane Bieber at 20, Gausman at 24, Pivetta at 8. Oh, wow. Pivetta up to 18. I guess I said that earlier. And McHugh at 7. So the ownership here is just pretty huge.
Yeah, for sure. I pulled up his numbers from the first start, too, against Tampa. He threw 12 sliders to righties, 41.7% whiff percentage. Obviously you can't take anything meaningful away from that, but other than the fact that he is throwing the slider that he now has.
Yeah, that's nice to know. And throwing it at a pretty high clip, too.
Yeah, 50% to righties.
What's that?
It was 50%
right.
to righties,
right.
I believe.
That's pretty significant. I wonder, too, his velocity was around 90. Last year it was around 92, 93. That could be that he's just intentionally taking something off of it because he's going to be throwing a lot more pitches per start.
Yeah. Did he face no righties in this game? I don't know. It seems weird that he only threw 24 pitches to righties.
But let's see here. First righties by game. Well, I guess that would be the case, huh?
Yeah, I'm looking at Brooks Baseball, and it has him with 24 pitches to righties and 50-something to lefties.
Yeah, 12 slider, 8 four-seamer, 3 curves, and a cutter. You're right. All right, well, yeah. I guess there were a lot of lefties. Let's talk about Houston's bats. Like I said, they do have the highest implied run total. They've had the highest run total every night and finished with the lowest amount of runs. But once again, you're still looking at power bats in Springer and Bregman, one of the best hitters in the game. Correa's still pretty cheap on FanDuel. Brantley batting cleanup. Altuve here slotted into the 2-hole. Yuli Gurriel, Reddick, and Chirinos batting 8th. Tony Kemp batting 9th. Go ahead, man. Let's talk about it, and we'll close it out with Texas Angels.
Yeah, I mean, it's not the best spot. You said earlier Montas isn't bad, and he's not a high strikeout guy, but doesn't give up a lot of damage either. Well under 1 home run per 9 to righties last season. A good Oakland bullpen.
By the way, that's what I was referring to when I say not bad. I don't, fantasy wise, he's not good. He doesn't have any upside, but he did a pretty decent job of limiting runs as a starter last year.
Right. Yeah. No, I agree. So I mean, it's again kind of just taking talent, but I think that Houston probably comes in at a lot higher ownership than some other very talented offenses tonight. So I don't think that I'll end up really like jamming them in unless their projected ownership for some reason goes down between now and lock. I think Brantley would be my favorite one-off just because he's the lefty in the middle of the order here and he has some pop. Bregman as well stands out when you kind of look at what Montas throws and how Bregman matches up against it. So like I have Houston obviously as one of the better stacks on the slate. I just don't think that they're like far and away better than anyone else.
Yeah. Something interesting too, last year, and we're seeing it again early this year, Montas basically cut way back on his 4-seamer, which was touching triple digits as a reliever, and just loaded up on 2-seamers. So it's not a huge surprise to me that you're not seeing a lot of strikeouts from this guy. I mean, seriously, he was touching a couple of years ago. He was touching 102. That was his peak velocity, gotten up to 102. Pretty insane. And now he's still sitting like 97 on the fastball, or on the 4-seamer, but doesn't throw it all that much. I think you go back to Houston here and hope that this is the day they break out. Like you said, bet on talent. All right, let's close it out. We've got one game to go here. MLB Live Before Lock and NBA Live Before Lock coming up next, both on YouTube, 2 different shows, both on the Awesemo_com channel. So whichever you're playing, you can check them out. If you're playing both, you can head over, check out NBA. If you want more baseball info, well, stick around for Live Before Lock. Texas and the LA Angels, Felix Pena and Lance Lynn. Lance Lynn, man, if his numbers against righties were the same against lefties, this dude for years would have been one of the best pitchers in the league. But that wasn't the case because he's really struggled against lefties. Last year, no strikeouts versus lefties. The year before, a ton of home runs against lefties. I wish it was the Rangers facing him today, but I don't really care that much because Felix Pena, as far as lefties go, isn't all that much better. I actually really like hitters from both sides of this game, Adam. If you like either pitcher, we can start there. If not, let's jump right into the hitters.
Yeah, it's just the bats for me. The top of the order, specifically for the Angels, Calhoun and Bohr, obviously their 2 best left-handed hitters. Mike Trout, their best hitter.
And Bohr's been terrible, but he's got to get right at some point, and it's a really good spot.
Yeah, you would think. So yeah, I mean the top 3 there is a pretty nice mini stack for the Angels, but where I really like the hitters is from the Texas side here. It's a very similar spot to last night. Pena probably better against righties than Matt Harvey is, but he's also just been very, very bad against lefties. Doesn't have a pitch to get them out with. And so I don't really see that changing going forward. Noah Razar is expected to be back in the lineup tonight. The lineup still hasn't come out yet, so I expect that we'll have relatively low ownership here because, for one, they don't have a particularly high implied run total, though it is climbing. And for 2, we don't have a lineup, and it's an hour before lock. That normally keeps ownership down. But you just have it's not the best park for hitting. But for 1, there's not a lot of great hitters parks, again, this time of year or on this slate. For 2, you just have so much power with left-handed power. Chu has some power. Odor has power. Gallo has some of the most power in all of baseball. Mazara's got power. Cabrera's got power. Guzman's got power. And you're talking about a pitcher in Pena who does not strike lefties out either. So you take Texas as a team that it's a really big trade-off between guys that strike out a ton, but when they hit the ball, it goes really far. And now you're taking a pitcher who doesn't miss bats, and you're having him pitch to this team. I absolutely love Texas again. My favorite stack again.
Yep. It's pretty much exactly what I had mentioned in the deeper dive or the deep dive today. Sorry. Gallo's going to strike out and Gallo's going to hit a lot of home runs. And when he's facing guys that can't miss bats, it's not going to end well for them. I'm with you. Really love Texas here, but I also do like the top of this Angels lineup quite a bit. And I think it's a pretty solid stack option against Lynn, who got blown up in his first start, but also really struggles against lefties and has been the case for basically his whole career. I mean, you can do what you want with guys like Brian Goodwin and Tommy La Stella, but the top of that is really the most appealing. Anyway, that'll do it for us. Before we go, I did want to let you know that if you wanted to check out awesemo.com and get 50% off your first month, all you got to do is use the promo code Deeper Dive. One word, Deeper Dive. You can check out, you get the ownership projections that Adam and I reference every day, the player projections, all of our articles, the Fantasy Cruncher add-on, the lineup builder, all of Alex Baker, Awesemo himself, his content, his rankings, his articles, and so much more from every sport. If they have DFS for it, we cover it on awesemo.com. The promo code is Deeper Dive, all one word, and say what's up to us in the premium Slack chat when you sign up. Deeper Dive, one word. All right, Adam, top stacks, and then we'll head out. We are right up against it, so go ahead.
Yeah. Texas, Milwaukee, Boston, and Houston for me.
All right, well, that's pretty simple. Me too. But I will also say that if we're clear in Philly, definitely the Philadelphia Phillies should be on that list. That'll do it for us. Before you head out, hit that thumbs up button if you appreciate this content and you want to see more of it, because we appreciate you and it helps us a whole lot. Subscribe, hit the notification bell as well so you always know when our new content's going to drop next, or when we have a bad stream and I have to change it and we have a whole new link and it screws everything up like today. But thanks for sticking around. As always, good luck tonight. Have a good weekend. Adam and I will be back with you on Monday, and Live Before Lock for both NBA and MLB is coming up next. Good luck tonight, friends.